Welcome to the Paradings podcast. I'm Jake.
I'm Chantal.
And we have our friend Nicole on today.
Hello.
Hi.
Nicole.
It's so funny.
This is really fun for me because Nicole actually got me into the podcast game when we were starting the Best Box podcast for the company you were working for. And I remember you were actually you owned. I shouldn't say you're just working for. Yeah, sorry. It's not.
All good.
Yeah, but I remember you were so excited about that. I think I had just thrown it out as a random idea. Like, well, podcasts are popular. Let's do one. You're like, I've always wanted a podcast.
I was going to say, I've always wanted a podcast. And I feel like you helped us get into the podcast game because you had the skills. I'm like, I can show up and talk, but like, then what? Jake's like, I know the then what. And then I was saying the other day to my girlfriend, Krista, that our first podcast, like we had no plans. We just, the three of us just turned it on and just talked. And I remember listening to it back after. I'm like, oh, that is so cringy, but like also so amazing, but also so amazing. It's like the first time you hear yourself, right? You're like, I say like so much. Is that what my voice actually sounds like? And just how that evolved. We podcasted for a solid year and how different it felt by the end, but how we just like started. And yeah,
that was so fun.
So
I had no idea what I was doing either. I'm like, well, I can kind of like wrangle this conversation around. Let's sit down and
let's do it. Yeah, it was really fun. And now it's been like, I don't think I've recorded a podcast in like 6 months. So it's awesome to dust that off. And,
yeah, it was kind of like, what's happening? I think I reached out to Tony a while back. I was like, what's going on with this? Like, we haven't done anything. Haven't seen anything in a while, but.
So what happened?
We took a pause. You know what? I feel like when we had so much on the go and so many exciting things happening in so many different areas, had to take some evaluation of we only have so much time and resources, and I think we created so much amazing content that we realized like we have this library of a year's worth of content, producing content every week with the time to produce it. And I was writing the show notes and our copywriter and all the pieces. We actually were going to circle back and go back through the year and transcribe everything and just kind of dig in and reuse and use that to share more of what we did over the year. And then the new chapter came, and so I'm not sure what the future of the Best Box podcast will be. But I hope eventually to start my own again as well. I know someone today was like, "You're podcasting again? I really miss listening to you podcast and listening to you talk." I'm like, "Oh, cool. That's like nice to hear."
You ever think you might do one just of your own?
Yeah,
just like what we do. I mean, we're just talking.
Yeah, totally.
Like you said, right?
Yeah, 100%. I'm way more. And it's funny, if you saw my Instagram yesterday, I actually wrote some words, and I've always really struggled with spelling and grammar. Like if you put me in a test, I'm probably a grade 4 level. It holds me back from like showing up because there's always multiple people who are like, hey, you spelled this wrong, punctuation. And so I know that I'm just way better with speaking than I am with writing. And it was a life coach one time was like, if writing's hard for you, like, just talk. And I'm like, I love to talk. This is a great idea. And so she kind of pushed me to like, do videos and speak. And then someone can turn that into writing if that's just because, And then yesterday, right after I did those posts of like, hey, I'm going on a podcast. Here's my life this last year. Like 3 people like said something about my spelling and grammar. And that's when I made the post. I'm like, if this triggers you, I am not for you.
I think that's crazy considering how people are literally saying, or putting the letter V to express the word very.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh, is that what I thought it was a Roman numeral 5.
Yeah.
No, I had to ask. You look V cute. And I'm like, what the fuck does that mean? Why can't you just say the word? So after that, who cares?
Yeah. So yes to podcasting. And that round circle it was awesome to start it. I can't believe we did it for a year. And I was like stoked to get back and brush it off today and
excited.
See what the future brings.
Well, I'm glad we can bring you back into it in 2023. First experience.
Awesome.
Yeah, I don't know. I saw that list that you had, and that it really excited me because I was like, oh yeah, like she's gonna show up with stuff and things. Because that's the hardest part of putting together an episode. So I don't know. Is an area you want to start? Like, there's a lot going on. So
so much going on.
Yeah. Where do we start?
Oh, it's hard to say where do we start. I feel like I kind of say this last 12 months has been the most like transformative 12 months that I feel like everything's different. Everything's changed. Where I was this time, or just, December of, a year ago, I was married. I had a poly partner for 2 years, a queer partner. I had a best friend of 25 years, a business that I was in, and a house that I owned. And in the last year, it was coming out as gay and ending my marriage, ending of partnerships, an ending of a 25-year-old friendship because it wasn't healthy anymore. And it kind of crazy in all the changes and ending of things. That was actually maybe one of the hardest because that's someone that you think like I've known since I was a kid and you're going to be in my life and family no matter what else is going on. And then selling the house and moving out on my own and the business changing. It's just like, it's a bit of like a whoa, like it's crazy when you're in it. You kind of feel like things aren't changing and it's moving slow. And then you reflect back, you're like, whoa, 2023, this new year, I feel like everything's been shaken up and I have this kind of like fresh space and then I'm kind of recreating me the most like aligned and authentic and like I feel the most happiest and myself that I like ever have in my life. I would say this year has kicked my ass. Everything for therapy has been great. Therapy, life coaching, mastermind groups, like all the things I did not do this year alone. But yeah, and when I shared a little bit of that on my Instagram yesterday, so I feel like I used to be pretty out on my Instagram in terms of life and day to day, and it's pretty quiet over there. I pop in the random ferry trip or whatever I'm up to. And it was pretty kind of across the board that people were like, I always enjoy hearing your business stuff, but like you came out, like, what's your coming out story? And sorry, you're like, you practice non-monogamy. What is that like? So that was like a lot of I was surprised. I expected people were going to be like, entrepreneurship journey, what's your business, blah, blah, blah. But people, thanks everybody that kind of asked to know more of like my personal life and stuff.
Well, Gary Vee's kind of exhausted that entrepreneur angle.
Yeah.
People want to hear about people now.
Well,
that has me think maybe we should start with then maybe how I met you. Like, because I met you before all this changes, and then that sets it up so everyone can understand, I guess, how much this change really meant.
Mm-hmm. Totally.
So we were going to the same gym. This was before you owned it. We were just members working out. And it was a Christmas party, right? Christmas party. I'll let you take it from there.
Yeah. And I actually, it's funny. I had a picture of you and Chris at that Christmas party, my now ex, and you took a picture and you guys wrote "Death by Grilled Cheese" on this Polaroid picture. And I can't remember why, but it was a gym Christmas party and we had crossed paths maybe at the gym, but all I remember is like, I was new at the gym. I didn't know anybody. So like, obviously I'm going to gravitate to the snacks and just stand there. Cause like, that's where I'm going to find my people. And if not, I'm just going to eat the awkwardness until someone comes around. So I was standing there and I was like, whoever brought this cranberry free dip, like, who are you? And then I remember Jake coming over and being like, yeah, like I brought this. This is like a recipe from somewhere. And I remember being like, can I have the recipe? Expecting you to like text it to me, but you sent me a picture of a recipe card that was like handwritten recipe card. And we were still like strangers. And I didn't really see you at the gym after that. And I remember a couple months, probably because I only went to 8 o'clock like once a week. It's probably more of a me thing, probably not being at the gym. But
I wasn't that regular then either. So
yeah, and it might have been the following year later. I was at a Christmas party, and then I was like, you know how you make friends? You make that brie and cranberry dip, and I'm gonna make it. And I brought it to a party, and everybody was like, "This is the best." I think I like messaged you on Facebook. I'm like, I don't know if you remember me, but like you gave me this recipe, and
like, I do remember that too. Yeah.
I'm like popular at I tried to go back and find that as well. That must have been like an old Facebook or something that isn't around anymore. But yeah, that's kind of how it started. And then I don't know. Then we were members for a little bit in the gym before we bought it. I guess were you a member then, or did you reach out to at that point? Were you still off after your?
No, I kind of floated away. Like, I forget, I think it was a year or so before you guys bought it. I kind of floated away just because life got busy. I didn't go there as much, wasn't training as much, didn't have the time. I was focused on other career things. And then I don't think it was until Chris reached out when you guys were like in the process of buying or had just bought it. Because he was like, hey, we could need some help with some stuff. And that was like right at the beginning of my cancer thing. And I was like, like, see you in 6 months. I just like, I got to deal with something.
Yeah. So kidding. Yeah.
But yeah, I love that dip. It seems to always make friends. And I love to, because sorry. She's had it too.
Have you had it?
I haven't had it with the brie.
Yeah, I did the baked brie with it that time. That's right. Yeah.
So that means you still have the recipe because.
Oh, for sure.
Okay.
It's like it's a family heirloom in a way, and it came through this like, strange ex-girlfriend of my brother's, and I think that's why I find it so funny, because that chick was batshit crazy, but holy shit, did she have a great cranberry relish recipe that is like now our family's.
Isn't that so funny how that ripple effect to like, I just like was like, as soon as Chris was talking to you again and you were coming back into the gym, it was like we had this bond over this dip, and then
See, and this is why you always go to the snack table, like you said. That's where you make that's where you make the bonds. That's
where you find the people. And then before we knew it, you were back at the gym, and then we were making a podcast together.
Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah. Well, we were just talking about that. We just did a recording about my cancer experience, and I was mentioning too just how instrumental you guys were in my recovery from that, because I felt like I had not only like the support of you guys as friends, but the community of the gym as well, and getting able to just share some of my recovery with people and seeing that sort of motivate them. So
cool.
Yeah, it was just all around great timing. So yeah, and then so I met you. It was you and Chris, and this was before you had your son.
Yeah.
And so life, you looked like just I don't know, pretty normal lower mainland life.
Normal lower mainland life.
Is that a term you can use?
Wow. That's like basically calling you the most basic bitch you can without saying it.
I was kind of the same. I don't know. Like,
well, and you're right. And fair enough. And like even Chantel, I remember Jake, you and I were working out together, and I was like, what are you up to? And you're like, oh, I'm having dinner with this girl I'm hanging out with. And I was like, tell me more. And it was just like, you guys were just starting to hang out. And then I think we actually had you over for dinner with Chris and I, and we had like a pizza making night. And that was crazy because at that point, that was the end of the year. Like I came out and had the hard conversations in like January. So a year ago. It was only a month or two before that when you guys came over, and it was such a wonderful time. And it was so hard to the end. You guys were like, let's plan it again. In my head, I'm like, I'm about to have some really hard conversations and everything's about to change. But like, that was super awesome. And like, I knew it was coming, but like nobody else really did at that point when we all hung out that night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'd love to have different times.
Yeah, totally. Right. Yeah. I'm heading out to Calgary next weekend. Next weekend. We can make plans later. Here I am, like, okay. Everyone listening is like, I don't care.
Come over.
We'll text about it later. Yeah,
but I'm so excited. But
cool, there's a window. Love it.
Yeah.
Squeeze it in.
That doesn't tell you my planner type. I'm like, okay, let's schedule it right now. Oh, right. We're like recording a podcast.
Guarantee after this, Jake's going to put it in the calendar.
Yep, for sure.
Love it. Yeah.
But so from that moment, I guess from when we came over, then like maybe that was the time. So I remember you started to kind of open up a little. Like I dropped by the office to like check in or to record an episode, and I remember you like having these sort of, I don't know, it felt like hints of these hard conversations you were like about to have or currently having. I don't remember the timing of it, but
yeah.
So I do remember feeling that out, but also I was like, well, I don't know, like.
Yeah.
Sounds like she's got a lot, so I'm just going to let her.
I think it's so funny. I think for some people, like coming out, and I feel like that's why, like, I'm like, you know what? I've never really shared my whole story with anybody except for like the people kind of around. And I feel like a lot of people assume that my coming out story was just in this last like year or two, where in hindsight, for some people, I'm like, this has been like a 15-year coming out story. Before, and we can kind of jump in if we're cool to kind of rewind back, but it's also just kind of crazy to share. I'm like, how I never thought I'd be here, and I'm so grateful that I am here today. At this point now,
are here with us too. And
So I think if I like go back, there was a lot of points, even in like elementary school, where I was like, I think I have a crush on that girl. I'm like, is that a thing? I don't really know. And then I had like a crush on a boy, and like there was a lack of context, I will say, back then, where I was like, oh, if I like a boy, then I'm straight. And that was that. And I kind of just like put that aside. And then as the years got older and in my teen years and all of that, there was some experimenting and fun and like all that kind of stuff. And I was like, cool, this is definitely a thing. Like, definitely like girls. I think I like guys as well. Oh, like you can be bi. And I didn't even really know that was even a thing. And once I like heard that, I was like, oh, okay, that like kind of fits me. And when I met Chris at that point, I was like, I always just say there was like this pre-Chris era, that anyone that knew me pre-Chris knew that I was some level of queer of some kind. And I met Chris, and on our second date, I'm like, hey, PS, like, I'm bi. Like, he's like, cool. And I was like, cool. And I was like, that was great. I had like owned that, and he knew about that from the beginning. And he always had like a safe space for that. And then, yeah, I feel like from there, it was like a couple years into our relationship where I was like, dang, I'm like really struggling, like not having that type of connection or that in my life anymore. But I'm like super happy with this person. Like, I mean, you guys know Chris personally. He is like, which actually made this whole process probably one of the hardest parts, because he's a gem of a human being. Our relationship was epic. Our communication was great, like so good. But a couple years into our relationship, I was really struggling and like crying a lot. I said to Chris, I was like, I think what I'm doing right now, I'm just grieving. I'm grieving this part of my life that this bow is on and it's no longer a thing. P.S. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
Not a thing. But I was like, cool, that's where I'm at. And then about the 5-year mark, it all kind of came up again. And one night I was laying there, I'm like, I'm definitely bi. Like, I have to just say this out to the world. This is like consuming my thoughts. I just need it to not be a secret anymore. And that was, again, about 5 years into our relationship. I came out to my mom and a number of my friends. Some of my friends at that point were like, oh, wow, okay. And some friends were like, yeah, I know. Like, I knew you before Chris. Like, I know. Yeah. And so then that was just kind of like, I was like, okay, perfect. Now this is it. Now I'm going to feel better. I've like told some people close to me, it's not this secret that I'm holding anymore. And that's like out in the world. It's known. That's just like part of who I am. There were some people like my dad, and stepmom, for no reason. I don't really know why. Like, there was a few people that didn't actually like know anything about any of this until this last year. But a lot of people at that point, coworkers and things like that. And yeah, and then it was around, I guess, I mean, my whole coming out story, I feel like it is entwined to non-monogamy and poly, and like, yeah, feel free to jump in and ask questions at any point. I'll just like keep rambling so you're good.
Yeah, no, it's all like flowing right now.
Yeah.
So
cool. Yeah. So it was like around this time, I feel like Chris and I, and just in general, like the topic of just non-monogamy has always been really interesting to me. And I joke when people ask me like, well, how'd you know? Or like, you know, what made you think? I'm like, I feel like I've just always kind of been that way. Like, 2 boys asked me to grade 7 grad, and I said yes to both. I didn't know that wasn't okay. They were really upset when we got there, and they realized they both had the same date. Again, we were like 12.
Ooh, yeah.
Right? So I feel like that's something I've just always been really interested in, and like followed a bunch of people on YouTube and Instagram. And that was something that, like, you know, Chris and I already talked about a lot. And I feel like this is where I always like give this, like, I don't know. I feel like people think a lot of times like, oh, you wanted non-monogamy because you were bi. And I feel like that's like a myth. And that a lot of people think like those two things are connected. And I always like to kind of share, I'm like, and this can go in so many ways, but that you're like, sexuality is a scale. Most people aren't exactly here or there. It's somewhere, wherever. And as well as you're like, what's the word? Like you have monogamy scale. So someone can be bi and completely monogamous or completely poly. And so I really tried to like decouple that like me being interested in non-monogamy is unrelated to me being bi. However, it's kind of a win-win situation that, so then anyway, Chris and I just talked about this for a long time. And, it was after it was on the table. And then had Trav and had my kiddo and, just again, life. And then, yeah, it just kind of like kept coming up and more stuff kind of coming up for me that I was like, I need to explore this, both pieces and aspects of it. And yeah, it was around 2020. And I feel like this is where it kind of gets hard that like I'm such an authentic person. And I feel like this is where I stopped showing up on Instagram. It's as silly as that sounds, because I always wanted to show up in my truth. And I feel like around that time, all of a sudden, very quickly in opening up our marriage, I met someone and it was in a relationship. They had another poly partner. Sorry, I totally lost my train of thought of what I was going to say with that. But anyway, so yeah, it was around that time. Do you remember what I was saying?
Yeah, well, it was 2020.
Chris, 2020.
And you started not showing up as yourself, like,
right. Thank you. That's what it was.
Yeah.
Right. Because I felt like I just couldn't be open at that point with being non-monogamous. And this is something that's actually like still new and sharing about and something I want to, but it wasn't just me in that situation. Even though like I was more comfortable being open about it, I wasn't the only party involved. And that's when all of a sudden I felt like a little bit like I was living this, if I would show up on Instagram with this one life, that every single week I had this other life that was like so amazing. And like this whole lifestyle that I was part of, that I was like, it's hard for me to kind of show up and only show part of that. And that was definitely part of me like stopping sharing everything that I was sharing about, and kind of went inwards that way. And at that point too, I was like, I mean, even my friends were like, oh my gosh, you're like having your cake and eating it too. You have this like great marriage and husband and kid and house and family. And you have your queer partner, and, once a week you have a night away from your kiddo, and, and it was really great. I feel like at that point I was always, and some of this is going to get a little spicy. We're talking about my sex life in hindsight a little bit.
So, bring
it. Yeah, this is open conversations here.
Space.
Cool. And yeah, and I feel like at that point when my friends were like, oh, blah, blah, I always thought I was having a great sex. Like I was never not having sex. I was like, whatever. But I also was at that point in my life where I was like, I had done a lot of self-work and just accepting that I didn't orgasm. I didn't like my boobs touched. But I really just thought that was just me, and I had accepted it, and I was like, cool. Like, and then when I started experiencing a queer partnership, I like wore a tank top. And one time being intimate, there was like something was said like, why don't you take your shirt off like normal people? And I was like, I don't know. I don't. And then and it sounds so terrible, but like the best way I'd explain it back then was like, I wanted a tank top on my top because having my nipples touch literally felt like, and again, sorry to any family that's listening to this, but hey, it's good knowledge. And this sounds so bad, but it literally, the feeling it gave me in my body was like, when you have a scar and you touch it and it makes you kind of nauseous. Like that is like, it was just a no.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden I was having very different experiences with my queer partner at the time, as well as we were dating other people. It was really cool that they identify as non-binary. So came from they'd been poly for a while, which was really cool to like connect with someone that them and their girlfriend had also been poly. So like they had experience. It was a safe place and kind of a fun way for us to like date other people. It was just like a really great experience. Yet also all of a sudden I was like, oh shit, like I got into this with no intention of my marriage ending or anything like that. I had and that was a really hard thing at the end. Like, and Chris and I really are at a point where like, wow, we had a really great 12 years. And when we were separating, we had some friends be like, I've been with my partner for 12 years and it's been shit the whole time. And so we really were like, you know what? Like, we're so grateful that other than me being gay, there wasn't other problems, which actually made it. Then I got to the point over the 2 years of where it was easier for me to suffer on my own than hurt everybody else around me and change everything that we do. To change my kid's life, to Chris and my family. We've been together for 12 years. It was just easier for me to like internalize, which then resulted in like Nicole in the bottom of the shower by herself having panic attacks and crying constantly. And I feel like there was a point where I was like, I think I need a therapist, and started that. And I feel like there was a few like moments where I was like, oh man. And I think she said one time, she's like, so basically what you're telling me is like, once you know, you can't unknow. And I think before that, there was a lot of exercises just in general with my life, both like in intimacy and just all the situations, friends, family. Like she encouraged me to like drop into my body and like listen to my body. And then that's when I realized in intimacy with queer relationships, my body was like, yes, please. And that in my not queer intimacy relationships, I didn't realize how much I was disassociating and thinking about those other things, or just like it wasn't a yes. And that's when I was like, well, that's like not fair to the person that I'm with. To have that. And that was a part where I kind of thought, oh, it's easier for me just to suffer. And I was like, actually, like they're suffering without really knowing it. And that's not really fair.
Suffering breeds suffering.
Right. Yeah. Totally. And I was like, and I felt, and that's kind of where I posted on Instagram, where I felt like I was a shell of a human, that like on the outside, I was like, what you said, the typical lower mainland. It was just, it just looked like everything was fine, but internally, like I felt like I was like going through the motions. There was a lot of internal, it was like every day this was like on my mind of like, is this a thing? How do I know? And I feel like there was a lot of like learning, getting to know queer people. I feel like something I just didn't know, as silly as it maybe sounds, like I didn't know I could be gay. And like, I'm so gay. I'm like so gay. It's ridiculous. Like I didn't realize that I could be gay and not think guys were gross. Like I look at a guy and I'm like, you're a handsome dude. When I actually think about like, I don't want to actually do anything with you, but like even that, someone telling me that and meeting other lesbians that were like, yeah, I like, there were some that are like, heck no, but I'm like, yeah, they're good looking or whatever. That I was like, oh, like there was so much learning and unlearning a lot of like the term compulsory heterosexuality, which is kind of like the expected thing, right? You meet a guy, you do the thing, like blah, blah, blah. So yeah, I feel like at that point too, and I'm just going to like say, I'm so grateful to the partner. Them and I still stay in contact. We're not in a relationship anymore. But over the 2 years, like that's a lot to like hold space for someone who's like really trying to figure themselves out. Like, there was benefits to that, but it was also a lot, as well as like being with someone that they were more out poly than I was. So also being, and also that I was like, when we were together downtown and out, we were together. I would never like not be out with this person. However, I was posting about Chris and I out on this family thing, but then not posting a picture of them and I on a trip or like a thing. And yeah, there was just a lot of like challenges, but I like ultimately am like incredibly grateful that they were so understanding and held space for me to like figure out.
Yeah, it makes just what a gift to someone to like, bring you into yourself.
Totally. And like
because they have the experience and sort of know like, okay, here are the pitfalls of these kinds of relationships and this kind of a lifestyle. And I will give you the time and space to learn that with me.
Totally. And
that's
like,
a great gift. It's a beautiful gift.
Really was. And like, I'm grateful for the year of figuring out my queerness. And it was funny. They said to me at one point, like, do you know how I knew you were gay before you, because they kind of called me out and I was really upset. I was like, don't tell me that bi isn't valid, blah, blah, blah. Just like kind of being defensive, and so I can be stubborn. As I unpacked that a little bit more, was like, and they were like, yeah, it wasn't because of like the knowing how you are in queer intimacy, but like your experience you share with me of how you are in straight intimacy, and that like, those were all the signs that like wasn't whatever. So
just all of your body saying like, no.
Yeah. And I feel like, and then like, because I kind of sharing the coming out story versus the poly stuff, I feel like that could be a whole other like episode on its own. But it was, like I've said already, it was so cool that they had experience in it, and that like it was a weird time. This 2 years, a lot of it was over COVID. And there was a lot of time where even that was a lot where when we were in our bubbles and we weren't supposed to see anybody that was outside of our immediate circles, I had this other partner that was like in Vancouver outside of my circle. But like, we continued to see each other. And then as things opened up more, my gosh, so many fun, just like dating stories. And, you know, it was a really cool, like people always say like, you know, with poly, I'm like, you really have to go into it, or just whatever the word is, whether I really like ethical non-monogamy, like whatever, open, whatever that is like, if you're going into it with a partner, like with my now ex, like with Chris and I was like, you have to come into it from like a good place. I'm like, we came into it because we were in a really good place in our relationship, and we actually had the best 2 years ever. It forces you to have good communication. It forces you to work through some of your own shit with like jealousy, bringing that up, and like processing jealousy, and like processing communication, and processing to communicate your needs. And I feel like there was so much growth in like that relationship with Chris. And then in my queer partnership, you know, by near the end, we were so good that we'd be playing cards and chatting and like, oh, hey, I met this person. Oh, cool. I think I'm going to meet this person. And one day we were both chatting to people, and we realized we were chatting to wives and that they were going to be at the same event we were going to be at that night. It was like a babes on babes queer dance party. And we're like, whoa. And then we're like, let's have a double date and like, whatever. So we just had like so many crazy experiences that were like so awesome. And I know like for my family and stuff, it was hard. Like they're like, I feel like the saying kind of came out around that time that like, this makes people uncomfortable because same thing, it triggers people's own stuff with maybe past of cheating or trust, or I could never do that. You know, and I was like, I realized I'm here not to make you comfortable, but like a safe place to be uncomfortable and like ask me the questions or things like that. And I feel like the common question was like, well, how can you love more than one person? Because for a period of time, I was in love with two people. And for me, like the best way to explain it was like, when people have another kid, your love like grows. You don't love someone less or that, and that learning that like this relationship didn't take away from that relationship, and that I could have both of these things. So yeah, it's really crazy that like it was this mix of all this going on behind the scenes, and like no one knew. Then basically I was in this, like the defining moment when I was like, okay, like things are going to change, was like my therapist we talked about like, once you know, you can unknow. And I had said to Chris, I was like, for the first time ever in our relationship, I was like, I need a pause on intimacy. I need some time just to like be with myself.
Swallow that bubbly rug.
Yeah, just the right time though.
Perfect time.
Oh
Continue,
God,
Nicole.
I'm so sorry.
I really appreciate it. You know what? Just like, whew.
Okay.
No, it fits with the story. It's perfect. Because I'm sure that's what the audience is doing. You said, what? Like, yeah, that's got to be a strange conversation to have. Like,
yeah,
even with your history up to then.
It was. And he was like, oh, okay, cool. And but then I was like, okay. And then a month went by, and I was like, I just need some more time. He's like, okay, cool, no problem. And I was like, okay. And then I was in this mastermind group that for the first time wasn't a business mastermind. It was like a self-growth. It was my life coach that was running it. And we had this woman come in, and we did an exercise that was like, everybody had paper, and we were talking about kind of our future higher selves. And this exercise was write down where you see yourself in your career, in your life, in your friends, in your relationships, but come at it from a space if you're doing it for you and you're not worried about hurting or affecting anybody else. So I did it. And after I was like, oh, that's really gay. Like, this is really different than my current life. And that was like the first time I was like, I have to choose me. And I circled back to my therapist. I'm like, I'm a person who wants to like take care of people and care for people, and like hurting people is like the most cringy shit ever. Like I'm usually the one picking up pieces for people. And I was like, I had to get to a place where I just knew that for me to choose me, I had to hurt other people, and like how to hold space for that. And then, then when December last year at Christmas, oh man, I have some like videos I recorded of myself, but at Christmas I knew like, I didn't want to do it at Christmas. My sister was coming in. But I knew that was the most out of body experience that last year, because every Christmas dinner and thing we were at, it's like I was sitting on the outside watching my family, knowing that everything was going to change, but nobody else knew yet. Mm-hmm. And I would like cry on the way to like the Christmas dinner, because I knew it was like the last time it was going to be the way everyone's known it for a decade or more than a decade.
Were you and Chris going together to these, or by yourself?
Oh yeah. We were still at this point, like in September, I had kind of said I need to pause intimacy. Mm-hmm. And then it was Christmas, that same thing. It was just kind of like status quo. And like, again, even to him, I think it was, you know, we're having both things. Like, he didn't really see it coming, to be honest. And then it was January where the conversation was, and again, because we were poly, there was some dynamics out there where people were like nesting partners, where you live with someone, but you don't have that physical relationship with somebody. So anyway, in January, I just said, like, we need to talk. And that, like, basically I can never be intimate with you or a guy ever again, like ever in my life. Like, I knew that at this point. And I was like, and to me, like, that is a big part of a relationship. And that was he was like, does that mean you need a divorce? I'm like, I think so. Like, I think so. And that really just like rocked our worlds for a bit, for sure. And, but I'm also so grateful for having this like epic communication and non-traditional relationship dynamic where, and the reason we were ending wasn't because of this. I said to my therapist one time, I was like, it'd be really helpful if he was an asshole. And she's like, okay, Miss Manifester, like, don't put that out in the world, because actually that wouldn't make it easier. I'm like, but it feels like it would make it easier because, and you know, I didn't ask him if I could share some of this stuff, but anyway, one thing he said to me, because he's just to show his character, was, you know, after I came out, and he was like, you know, I've been thinking about it, and like, you coming out and telling people, it's going to be really hard. So like, why don't you tell everyone that I cheated on you and you wanted to try being gay to see? And I was like, dude, like, you don't have to take that on for me. Like, wow. Like, and had so much grace in that, even though it was so hard for him, he's like, I just know that like, there's nothing I can do. I can't change that. We just need to whatever. And so, yeah, at that point, we separated spaces, but stayed in the same house. And we actually lived together for 7 more months, just in separate rooms, parenting, and all that kind of stuff. And then, yeah, in July, we kind of realized we both were at the point now where, yeah, you know, he was dating and things like that. And even though he was still open to non-monogamy, it just kind of happened that the people he was, you know, hanging out with at the time were like, sorry, you live with your lesbian ex-wife? Okay. Like, you know, like we're a little bit like, so when's she moving out kind of thing a little bit. And even though we didn't have pressure from anybody else, we both realized at that point, like, okay, it's been 7 months. In the beginning, it's such a shock. The idea of like, how are we going to parent? How are we going to live? This seems impossible to what this is going to look like. That I'm so grateful that we had like a very easy 7 months of transition time, even for our kiddo, who was like, why does mommy have her own bed now? I'm like, because we want to. And he's like, can I jump on both beds? We're like, yeah. He's like, great. Right? Like, right? Like, that's where, you know, he was at. And yeah. So then in July, got my own place. And yeah, so I like, even then in January, basically, once I had that conversation with him, he was like, how quickly do you want to like tell people? And I was like, my birthday's February 9th. And I was like, I can't get to another holiday and like fake anything. So we need to get this out on the table. And then that was the process of like, let's make the list of the people we need to tell, like your parents, my parents, and all the things. And it was very interesting. Again, for some people, like Chris's parents or my dad, who had literally heard or had zero inclination of any queerness whatsoever. Where some people were like, you told me 5 years ago. And other people were like, I knew you from before Chris. And it's funny, my dad and a few people have been like, but there was no signs. Like, there was nothing. And then I wanted to bring these today and like show them because they're funny. I was going through some childhood pictures. There's this picture of me at like 10 in like boys' clothes, just chilling. And then I got this picture of my room. And in my room, which at that point it was really into shopping, I had like bags like on my ceiling, and my stuffed animals were all hanging from my ceiling. It was a weird season of life. This is like preteen years. So somehow someone captured this picture of my room, and there's this drawing that I made, this massive drawing on the wall of this chick with huge boobs that says hottie. And it was on my wall. I'm like, in hindsight, Dad, there was a lot of things that were pointing in this direction. But yeah, it was kind of crazy. So man, now
people choose what they see in room, or like
yeah. And it just, my family was always, there was no reason not to. My sister had been out since we were young. My stepmom's brother was gay. Like there was no reason of like holding back my story for any other reason than my own whatever that I just in my own time. And that's actually fun. There's been a lot of unpacking of that, because there's a bit of like FOMO of, man, like I didn't figure this fully out until I was in my like 30s. I've missed so much, and everyone's like, it's in your own time, and it's like crazy. This Christmas, a year later. So Chris is now in a new relationship. He lives with his girlfriend, and she has 2 kids. It's such this crazy story that like we've actually known her for 12 years. She's actually a friend of mine. So when all this happened, her and I met up for drinks one night, because I was like, our dynamics changed, and we're like, let's just have this modern family where we're rock star co-parents who like just work together. And then this Christmas at my parents, my now girlfriend, which that's a story in itself. I'll sprinkle a little bit because it's super cute. But this Christmas was her at my dad's for Christmas morning, and Chris came over, and his girlfriend Chelsea came over, and all of us were there at my parents' house. I was like, this Christmas morning, I'm like here with my amazing girlfriend who I'm so in love with, and we had this cute, cheesy love story going on. And here's Chris and his new person. Like, holy moly! Like, and yeah, it's so great to see where things are like a year later.
Isn't it kind of funny when you're in that moment and you're fully in it and you're happy and everything is how it's supposed to be, that you can't even remember what it was like before?
Totally. It's so crazy. It's so crazy for that. And yeah, and then
it makes me keep thinking, of that question that people were asking, like, how can you love more than one person? And I just imagine all the love in that room. Like in that moment, like you're there with your family, your partner who you share a kid with, and your new girlfriend, and he's there with his new love, and like there's so much love, and there's just
and it's so
no
great.
fucking room for hate,
Yeah, just, and we just
let the love in. It's that simple, right? Like how cool. Yeah,
it's really cool. And it's funny, like the other day they were going somewhere, and I was like, hey, I don't mind like taking all 3 kids. So my girlfriend and I took my kiddo and my now ex-husband's girlfriend's 2 kids, all 3 of us. We all went to Chuck E. Cheese for the day, and their dad picked them up. So I'm like, I'm just messaging. I was depressed. I'm like, totally normal. Me just messaging your girlfriend's ex-husband to schedule pickup for their kids. But I'm also just like, fuck yeah.
Love this. Sorry, I love it so much. It's awesome.
Me too. And I'm so grateful for that. And I feel like that's something that I hope as like, I share more or whatever, that I see so many people with like, that was some of Chris and I, we experienced so many friends going through like yucky, crummy, dramatic separations. And we just, again, our separation didn't come from some traumatic, situation or whatever. But it's crazy that we're here now.
Yeah. Like an inspiration for, I guess, I call it like the positive side of like broken family. I don't know, like I keep thinking of that stereotype of just, well, I guess that's my dad's family, right? It's like really nasty divorce and a lot of infighting, and like, man, this is just the total opposite of that. Like,
it's like rearranging puzzle pieces.
Yeah,
you're all in the box, but you're not in the right spot.
I love that.
I want to say I'm really grateful and appreciative of you coming on here and sharing your incredible story, because I think this year for us, it's been, I don't know how many podcasts we've done this year, but it's been very vulnerable and we have been very open, and we really invite that here. And we hope that anytime that we have any conversations with anybody or even just us, that it reaches somebody and they can feel more comfortable in doing what they have to do to make themselves happy.
Totally. It's hard.
It is hard.
It's hard to choose yourself. It's hard to like really be like, what do I need? And then like acting on that and just holding space for the heart, because holy moly, like the amount of emotions, and it was, there's a lot of emotions at the ending. And then, and then I was like, okay, we kind of got through that. And then all of a sudden, once I was actually looking for a house again or apartment, that brought up emotions. Then I found a place. I'm like, great. And the day came to move out. And then, it was another thing of emotions. And yeah, it was definitely been, like you said, it's crazy to like be here today. And almost, I'm like, wow, that feels like a blur. And it's just crazy because I got at around the same weekend that I moved out and got my own place in July, my queer partnership of 2 years ended around the same time. So holy moly, I was just like, forget everybody else. I'm deleting my like dating app that I was on her for relationships. You know what? I'm going to have a love shack and I'm going to just make up for all the time that I've missed out. So I'm going to download Tinder. I'm going to go on Tinder.
Yeah.
And the first person I met on Tinder was Krista, my now girlfriend.
Okay. I was going to ask, please. I would love to hear your sweet love
story. My Tinder love. So it's so funny. We like hit it off instantly. Just like easy conversations, both really quirky and funny, and just like it just flowed super easy. And she was a year and a bit also out of a divorce from her wife. That's her story. I'll leave that part there. But we both felt, and I think this is a huge part of why our relationship is so great, is we were both like truly happy on our own. We both had no interest in really entwining with someone else. We were like, I'm like, I am happy with myself. No offense, I don't need you, but like I want you.
Yeah.
And like, and that kind of dynamic of just like, I am truly wanted to get to a place of like being good on my own, and same with Krista. And I feel like we were both there. So we met and we're both like, cool, we're on Tinder, same page. And after a couple of days of talking, Krista was like, look, I don't know if this is out there in the world, but I'm looking for like no relationship. I'm looking for like fun, good sex, and travel. And my text back was like, hi, my name's Nicole. And
perfect.
She was like, cool, that sounds great. Let's do it. And our it was a month of chatting, and then she invited me to her friend's birthday party over here on the coast on like Saturday night for their hockey team. I'm like, I'm going to show up on the first night to like meet your friends. I was like, well, I'm free all weekend. Why don't I come Friday? So I didn't even know her, and I was coming for a weekend. And we ended up both nights. She had like on the Sunshine Coast has a couch outside. Okay. And like we spent both nights up until 5:30 in the morning watching stars. I have spent more hours in the last few months watching stars and shooting stars than I ever have. And it was just like, it's kind of a joke because just last weekend she showed me this picture on her phone and I was like, oh, it's me chilling on her couch, just chilling. And I'm like, when was that photo? She's like, that was the morning of like the first day you were here. And I was like, I look comfortable. She's like, it says something like, hi, I live here now. But still.
That's pretty comfortable. Yeah.
Even though like the connection was there right away and just like a lot of things were really easy, we still were very both like, we're not looking for a relationship. Let's just like have fun. And then, yeah, it just like continued to like every time we're together was so great. And it's the little things like the compatibility from even as silly as like she made scrambled eggs for me for breakfast and she gave them to me and I'm like, these are the best scrambled eggs I've ever seen. She's like, no one's ever said that, they're dry. I'm like, I love dry eggs. I love them. And then I was like, you know what I hate when you're sleeping and
throws the dish to the ground, makes out, rolling on the floor.
Seriously though. Yeah. And then I was like, you know what I hate when there's like a little light in your room and it's like, you know, I need to like cover it with a sock. She's like, all my lights are covered with hockey tape. And I was like, you are how is this even a thing? And yeah, I feel like our humor is the same and our like being a little woo woo about like spirituality and stuff. And like, yeah, it was super great. And so, yeah, it was so funny that we called ourselves that we were in a slicemanship. We like made up a word that like wasn't a relationship. That was just like, hey, you're my slice. And yeah. And before we knew it, as much as we were like in denial about it, it just kind of, it was around like Thanksgiving, asked me to be your girlfriend. And then, yeah, it's just like, it's been incredible. I'm having so much, and it's just the three things, like we're having so much fun. We are having phenomenal sex and travel. We have like 3 trips coming up in the next 60 days. Like it's crazy that like everything is just aligned, and I love coming over to the Sunshine Coast, and I just like can't believe that this is like where I'm at. And I found a human that is so incredibly compatible. And also someone that we can continue like exploring non-monogamy with. So yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
When you change, when you follow your instinct, the world just opens up and things just align. Because I felt the same way with Jake here, like how things went for us. That's another episode you can go listen to back.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's so cool. It's so cool to hear, because I feel like it's happening for a lot of people these days, really like sticking their heads above the clouds and figuring it out.
Yeah. And I feel like it was a big part of that like we talked early on about how we were both into kind of like universal signs and angel numbers and things as signs. And she had shared with me that like a huge universal sign for her with someone in her family that had passed was like, hummingbirds. And our first weekend, the next morning, sitting outside on the couch, a giant hummingbird came like next to her head, like toward my face, and then flew away. And I'm like,
you and you.
Yeah, you. That's a thing. And then like that just like continued, and we both got to the place where we're like, well, at this point, neither of us expected this. Neither of us were looking for this, but let's just surrender and see what this is. Because maybe the universe handed us something when we least expected it. Mm-hmm. And yeah.
Exciting.
So exciting.
So what trips do you have coming up then? You're coming to Calgary?
Coming to Calgary. So Krista's originally from Alberta. So her best friend is theirs, and her wife. And yeah, so we're coming to Calgary just for a brewery hangout weekend. It's my birthday on February 9th. It's her friend's birthday. We got some super sweet price tickets on our flights, and we're just going to come hang out for a couple days.
Heck yeah.
I'm pretty excited about.
Have you been to Calgary?
Maybe when I was like a kid, but like not that I remember.
Yeah. No, it'll be different for sure.
Yeah. That'd be fun. And then we're going to Tofino for my dad's 60th birthday. And then what we're really excited about is we are going to Nicaragua and Costa Rica for this 2-week adventure at the end of March.
Fun.
Jelly.
Yeah. One of my best friends moved to Nicaragua. Her and her family and kids moved to this little surf town, San Juan del Sur. Mm-hmm. And so it's going to go visit her and do some surfing, and it's going to be awesome.
So that'll be your first trip together outside of Canada.
Yeah. We've had one trip to Tofino, and so just like we just kind of laughed when we were looking at our travel. I'm like, I know we want to travel, but this is like a lot of trips in the next like 60 days. It's like
do it.
Yeah, but just surrender.
Yeah, exactly.
I am. Yeah, totally right. Just surrender to that that's come up, and
Have I'm you really surfed excited. Before?
Yeah, I am. That's like a passion of mine. My dad is actually originally from Australia, so when we were kids, and my dad and my stepmom got together every year for 2 weeks, we'd go to Tofino and surf from the age we were in life jackets. So even though I've surfed since I was a kid, I'm like no expert because there's quite big gaps, but there's nothing more that I love than surfing. I've surfed mostly in cold places, but I've surfed in Costa Rica and Mexico. So I'm excited I've got Tofino surfing and then Nicaragua surfing. So I'm also like attracting surfing into my life again, which is pretty awesome.
That's so good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's fun to like play for activity.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've been going to a gym here, and they have basketball hoops, and they have basketballs there. And like I haven't shot hoops since like high school on the playground or something, and I didn't feel like really doing shit. And I just grabbed a ball and started shooting. And I'm like, this is fun. Next thing I know, I'm like running all over, sweating like a damn monkey.
Isn't it?
This is a workout, and I'm having fun. I forgot you can do that.
Yeah.
I think one of the most helpful things this year was I danced growing up, and right around this time of this whole like, holy shit, my life's about to change. I found this dance studio in Abbotsford, and it is the most like amazing community, and there's like drop-in classes, and our classes are everything from like sexy vibes to hip hop to like jazz, and it's drop-in classes, and same thing, just like moving my body for fun. And that was a big thing this year with all this change. I let go of the expectation of like what my working out and everything was going to look like. And I'm like, I realized I was moving my body not for results, but for just like joy and whatever that looked like. And dance really felt like that. And really gave myself permission to just do the movement or the things that brought me joy, as well as like eat all the donuts I wanted this year, if that's what was going to help me through this. And I did. Yeah.
I'm a big fan of donuts. I wholly approve. And I'm a little jealous that I couldn't be closer so I could join you.
Right.
Because man, do I miss those Black Tiger donuts.
Black Tiger donuts. Yeah. Yeah. Right. So just like having the fun.
Yeah.
He had just eaten like a chocolate cake before we got here.
Hold on. The full story though is we've been doing a lot of sobriety. So like when you're not drinking, you just crave sugar for a long time. And that's our deal. It's like, hey, we're not drinking, so like have all the sugar you want.
Yeah.
Thankfully I don't love a lot. But you know. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna have cake.
Don't you love that being an adult? You're like, I want cake, so I'm gonna make or eat the cake.
Yeah.
It reminds me of my first night living on my own. I think I made like French toast or something for dinner because I was like, right, no one else is making anything. I get to decide everything. French toast it is. Like
salt and air chips for breakfast.
Right? French toast is like my last meal. Like I love French toast more than anything in the whole world. However, I eat my French toast with ketchup.
Wild. I can see it though. With the cinnamon too?
No cinnamon. That's
okay.
Weird.
No cinnamon. Yeah. Don't make it weird.
So it's just the French toast without the syrup, cinnamon, but with ketchup.
Yeah.
Okay.
So people,
that
makes sense. Then
egg and bread and ketchup.
Okay, we're gonna have
you
to
ever
try
put cheese in there with it too?
No, but it's pretty funny as like having our kid grow up. Chris was from like his family's from Montreal, where like syrup is life. We're getting cans of syrup, like fresh syrup sent. So there's our kid, and we're like, we basically have the syrup and the ketchup, and we're like, which one do you want? No pressure, but be like me. So like,
that's funny.
What did he choose?
He put cinnamon and butter.
Because my dad also eats it with ketchup. So the other night, I have a picture of my dad, Travis, and me all eating French toast for dinner with ketchup. And I said to Chris, like, like,
that's funny.
Yeah.
That's so good.
So good. Yeah.
Do you want to talk about this human design that you?
Because
you introduced it to Jake. Jake
that
tried to show it to me, and I'm confused.
It's so funny.
I want to preface it with there's two things actually to say here. First, I want to say that when you introduced me to that, like so much of my life just made sense. Where I was like, oh, this is why I'm kind of a weirdo in the world, and like. Why my brain approaches situations in a way that most people go, why are you thinking that?
Yeah.
Or, I answer questions in a way that people go, that's not what I meant. And I'm like, oh.
I feel like you and I at that time were spending some time, we were kind of doing a little bit of like business support from the podcast and your photography business. And we're just talking a lot of stuff. And I literally was like, I feel like you're me. Have you heard of human design? And I think as I like,
pretty much how it went,
talk about it, that I was newly introduced to human design. But something that's really like passion of mine that I want to bring forward more in the business stuff that I do is like, I think it's really important to like connect deeply to who you are as a person. And I feel like there's a number of personality or like tests that are helpful. And I feel like and I was being introduced to that from human design to your Myers-Briggs to your blah, 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 just like, all of a sudden you're like being, and like Strengths Finder's a good one. So at that point I was exploring a whole bunch, and it was kind of like, I have this list actually of like, here's the 5 I recommend to do. And you kind of like, I was writing out, here's like the highlights from each one that kind of like painted this picture on paper where I was like, whoa, this is like so me in terms of like exactly how I operate different. So I think with human design, it's funny because I also just introduced my girlfriend to it, and she is a reflector, and that is actually the most rare human design. It's like 1% of the population. And she's like, okay, well, how do I know more? And I was like, Google. And she was like, are you serious? So I joked when I told her that you might ask about that. She's like, are you going to tell them to Google it too? And I was like, okay, well, it's just one of those things that like, I actually, with like your human design, I had followed a bunch of Instagram pages that I was like, wow, this is like, and I think you and I end up sharing a lot of the same ones that you read them and you're like, whoa, I'm really connecting with this. But it's kind of one of those things that's hard to kind of dive into your own and really figure it out. And I feel like the best thing I did was I found human design coaches, and a lot of people offer like one-on-one sessions where it's almost a bit of like a deep dive into like looking at your whole chart, because there's so much. It's like a mix of astrology and like, again, I'll butcher it. I'm not an expert. I will tell people to Google it. But it totally is, I feel like you said, realizing why or how I operate differently in terms of just like that my energy flows and that I need rest, and like a 9 to 5 doesn't really fit me. And around just like, kind of understanding how my energy operates. And a piece of that even too is like, even as I'm getting clients in my business, as a projector, I need to just kind of show up as me and wait for the invitation versus like dropping people's DMs like, hey, I'm offering the services. It's actually just like showing up and being like, this is just who I am. This is what I do. This is my expertise, and like trusting that. And then because I think a big piece of it, and this is hard for me, is that, and I read this the other day, it was like, just because you see something and you have an opinion and you know it's going to help doesn't mean people are ready to hear it. And when I heard that piece of it, I was like, oh, and that helped me be like, when someone asked me something, I'm like, do you want advice for me just to listen? And really waited more for the invitation from my perspective. Just realizing that some people aren't ready for my outlook or perspective on things. And a lot of that connected back to understanding a bit more about my human design. Yeah.
I have a question about that. Does it say anything about how the different designs come together? Like, so tell us about projector and reflector. How does that work?
Should we say too that Chantel's also a projector?
Yeah.
Even though she doesn't know what this means, I ran her chart.
I just figured that out.
Yeah.
We have the same 5-1 profile. So.
Okay, interesting. And I feel like when I looked up, and again, because I Googled reflector and projector in a relationship, and, found someone that's written some blogs on it and stuff. It's like a lot of and I feel like there's a lot of similarities in terms of like needing rest and space and just like different things. So like there is a lot of information about how to work together. I feel like one that kind of came to mind, especially when I was digging into my own, was a big thing with me is I don't have the consistent energy to go and do. Like I know I wouldn't be a good virtual assistant because I'm not the person that you want to have doing reoccurring tasks consistently. It will not happen. Me being a project-based person where I like step in and like do a project. And then and so point of that being is like, I learned that actually and it's actually really cool. I know we're not talking a lot into my business, but I'm just kind of getting started again. But from the beginning, I hired somebody, not a virtual assistant. I have an online business manager, and basically, and like needing someone to like a generator or a manifesting generator is someone who has more consistent energy to go and do. And so there's actually a huge compliment in having like a projector who has like wisdom and big picture. And like, I think the analogy was used one time was like a projector, they're going to build a house by like looking at the landscape and like being methodical, where a generator is going to like just like see the ground and like build the floor and then the next floor and the thing. And they're just like doers, and they see things differently. And just that like understanding how your two types like work together, as well as in your business or life, bringing in people, or as you're building a team. Like, I think this is something that like I really love, team dynamics and culture. And I feel like there just isn't enough of this out in the world, that like a team, you should know what all your team's human design is and what their strength finder is and their Myers-Briggs, and just like fostering those correct groups that are working together, doing the right jobs. Because ultimately, like, if it's more aligned with you and you can be more successful and do those things, it's going to have more results and happiness and all that. And I feel like there's just so yeah, that long and around is
well, on that note, I remember I'd seen a metaphor about this. Well, it wasn't talking about this, but this metaphor stuck in my mind. And when you talked to me about projectors and like generators and manifesting generators, like that relationship, it was something about like there's frogs and birds in terms of people, and like frogs are down in the muck, like they're doing things, they're the little details, but the birds are flying above and they're seeing where all the frogs and what all of the frogs are doing in relation to each other and how they could work together or, separate out land or do, like it's just that different perspective of being really close and minute and working on a detail, or being up above and seeing the full picture and saying, okay, we got 18 people building a, floor, but who's doing the foundation or something, like just, you can see the process and you go, hey, none of you are working together well, even though you're all working very hard.
Yeah. And I feel like there's a piece of like realizing that people have that bird's view and then using it and like wanting to whatever, but some people get stuck in the like, if they're, expecting, if you're a generator and go, that everyone else is going to have that same energy and not being open to the feedback of maybe like seeing it differently. So yeah, I feel like there's a lot of ways they can work really well together, and I wish more people like that were aware of it.
I wish I worked for people who were more aware of it.
Right?
So that'll make you like just like the best boss ever.
Yeah, thanks. Like, I'm just like, it's a huge piece that I think, there's that I didn't incorporate. It's stuff that I was doing a lot before. I was in aquatics for 15 years and managing teams, and I've kind of lost some of that. And that's kind of what I'm doing in this cocoon season right now, is just like, these are things that I'm really passionate about. Like really figuring out who someone is deeply as a human being, because ultimately, like you said, people care about humans. And I've come from so many workplaces over the years where you're just a person that needs to do the job because I said so, and versus just like, who are you as a human and how can like you thrive, and then how that can really work together. And I don't know how that's going to look yet, but I'm excited to sprinkle that out into the world more. So my thing with that, if you're just new, Chantel the Human Design, welcome. It's so fun and it's a rabbit hole. But I always say, like, start with like share the pages that Jake's on. And like I said, if you guys want to know more, especially like the girl I worked with now, I don't think does sessions anymore, but even did couple sessions. Like, let's have a session where like digging into like, and it was even little things. Like when I had one session with someone from Human Design, she's like, when you sit in like a coffee shop or an office, do you find yourself like in the back corner with like your back to the wall so you can see? I'm like, yeah, I hate being in the middle when it's like everything. I want to have like, so I even realized for my desk, it wasn't good for me to have my desk up against the wall, me facing the wall. It was better for me to have my desk like this, where the wall's behind me and my desk's in front of me. And there was just like so many of these little things that were just so many aha moments that like, I had never thought anything about that. But now when I walk into a coffee shop or a space, I try to find a space that I know actually like aligns with you. So yeah, it's a lot of like, cool stuff.
Yeah, I want to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I would say too, on the projector front, it made sense in a way. I think it helped me understand my energy, which I guess this, for maybe some people, gets kind of really woo-woo-y, but I'm really into it.
Me too. Me too.
Well, and one cool thing that I've recently been digging into is I was actually born in the cull, which I don't know if you know what that means, but like, so there's two ways. Sometimes a baby's born in the, like under the cull, which is where there's a piece of the amniotic sac still on their forehead. But I was born completely still in the sac, which is like a really rare thing. Yeah. I think it's like 1 in 80,000 births or something.
Is there a picture of it, or you just...
No. Well, my mom might. Actually.
Sorry.
I don't know.
I'm like, that'd be so cool. I want to see Jake in a sack.
There are pictures on the internet, though. You can totally Google this.
Which I've seen.
Yeah.
That'd be funny.
But yeah, reading up on that, and I don't know, to me, suddenly like my baldness made sense too, because they say that people born in the, like, they have sort of this, I don't know, other sense. Some of them kind of, it can be spiritual, like seeing ghosts and figures and things, and I don't know, there's a lot of cool mysticism in that regard, which I don't know if I really believe, but I love reading it. So good fun. But they said also that like, it's sort of that penetrating energy where like I see people in my whole life. I've always felt like if I meet somebody within like the first 10 seconds, I can basically understand who this person is.
Yeah.
I don't know if I could tell you the details of what they're going to do, but I know sort of what their moral boundaries are going to be like and how they will react under certain kinds of pressures. And I can immediately get a bead, like probably within 5 seconds even, of like, I can trust this person or not. And it's always been weird. And sometimes too, I'm around people who I feel like they can feel that, but they've never experienced that. And then that kind of just creates this really weird situation because I'm there like, this is like, I know you're a jackass or something, you know, and this person's sitting there and they're kind of like, how do you know this? But like, they can't say it, but I can feel it. They're kind of like, how do you know I'm shifty or something? I'm like, dude, like, you're giving me all the signs. Like, I don't know what to tell you.
A lot of some of the stuff with that is like a level of just like knowing and wisdom that comes along with a projector that sometimes can be unexplainable in terms of some knowings or things like that. And I went to, again, I've been dropping all the things in self-growth this year. I also went to a retreat in October. My dance studio owner is a life coach, and it was a retreat about like rewilding and wisdom. And it was like, we went to a beach and it was like, play like a kid. Like, I want you to roll, jump. Like, there was just like these, I cold plunged. Everyone was like either naked or topless in the ocean. We painted our bodies. It was just like, but it was all about wisdom. And I think that was part of my conversation was that, I realized in business, a lot of what I believe or do or know is important for a company or a culture, how I think should be. Like sometimes it isn't in a book. It's just like a knowing and a belief in a way. And that's like what I want to cultivate next in this next stage of my business is a place for that. Because some of it, just like you said, is just like a feeling and knowing, and that's hard to explain, but it's also helpful. I'm sure you find it really helpful. Like you said, it clicks. Like there's actually a really good projector podcast. I don't know if I sent you that. It's just it's a woman who's a projector, and she just talks about everything projector. And
is she Australian?
I don't know.
I feel like I listened to one who was an Australian lady in Whistler. It was pretty interesting, but I haven't.
Yeah.
Okay, no, you should send me though.
It's a lot of just like aha moments where you're like,
we can put a link in the bio.
Yeah, totally. Right. A place to start your quiz for human design. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, because I think that's what I found so great about it. And I don't know, as I've been just into that, and like I have a friend who's got a lot of astrology knowledge, and I've done readings with him. So I think that primed me for some human design and understanding that better as well. But there's something about a lot of that. I don't even know what to call it. Like it almost feels like an ancient understanding of the world that was buried and lost that we're kind of just rediscovering and going, hey, this actually clicks more. And like, I can't explain it with your numbers and your Dewey Decimal System, but like, this just makes sense. And when I follow these kinds of intuitions and signs, and when I interpret the world through these lenses, my life's easy and I get the things I need and want, and I avoid a lot of the assholes. It's pretty great.
And it's funny how for some people where you're like, I've been told that before in business, like, well, you know, where are the metrics? You can't just go off a feeling. A lot of your decisions are a feeling. Yeah. And I'm like, they are.
Are you a splenic projector?
I am.
Me too.
What's that?
I don't know what the spleen has to do with it, but it means like you have an emotional decision-making center. You make like big decisions based mostly on like an instinct or an intuition of how you feel about it.
And a lot of times it's paying attention to your first gut feeling, because something also being like a lot of times you'll have that initial gut feeling and then you can like question that gut feeling and like it's
really that's where I get into trouble too.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And there's a few things like that, but
well, I know when I started listening to my gut, everything started to work out. So, because I used to be like really defensive and no, that's right. That's not the right way to do it.
Well, and like almost to tie in there with our cancer conversation, that was I think sort of between me and Chantel.
Yeah. Well, we've had a lot of these conversations, conversations as well. I've been around.
But that was, when I made that comment to you about, so there was a coworker of mine who had made a comment to me, like, she meant it as kind of a jab in a way, because we were arguing about something props related, and I was kind of arguing it from a story a creative perspective, and she kind of like slammed something down and was like, oh, like you're an artist. I was like, really pissed me off, because I was like, yeah, you're fucking damn right I am. Like,
yeah. And I feel like that's maybe,
but I'd realized, that's where I was going with it in a way.
Yeah.
I think I doubted that first gut feeling. Like when I was graduating high school, people were like, what are you going to do? And I sort of chose this like safe track of, okay, get this kind of education and you can get in a union and it has all these benefits and this great structure and rules. And yeah, that's like what mom and dad did and the kind of stuff that brought their success. And then winding up at 25, burned out, feeling like I want to fucking die. Like, oh, right. Like, and then remembering that moment and saying, right, I doubted that first instinct. Like, and I didn't believe in my own voice and vision and potential. Maybe I didn't have the skill, but I have the potential.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I think that's like a long drawn out version of that. Like, don't take that long to learn that lesson, projectors.
Yeah. I feel like I joke now when everyone's like, oh, do you have a education fund for your kiddo? I'm like, you mean a therapy fund? That would have been really helpful if maybe all our parents say for that. But I'm like, some of these knowledge around like, what's your human design, or just like, I didn't realize, until, in my 20s when I was having just crippling anxiety, that I could quiet my mind, and my mind thoughts were something I could observe and be separate from, versus just like, those are me. And I feel like all this stuff, your personality type, all of this is something that would be all these things would be so helpful to learn earlier in life. Like here we are in our like mid to late 30s, like, cool, this could have been helpful 25 years ago. And maybe we wouldn't have experienced some of these things that we have. We wouldn't be where we are today without those opportunities for growth, but but also
helpful.
Yeah. Well, and like I ran my parents' charts too, and I think they were both manifesting generators. And that also clicked to me, right? Where I was like, oh, they have that generator energy. And then seeing them, yep, totally. Like now I also understand part of why I was like, I love you guys and I understand how all of this worked for you, but why when I do it do I feel miserable? Like these 9 to 5s, the intense schedule, or just do go, and like no time to sit back, relax, observe, like.
Yeah. And just actually giving yourself permission to do that and not feeling guilty. Because I don't know about you, but even
guilt.
I was gonna say, even though I'm at a place now where I'm doing more of that, it's hard not to hold guilt. And one thing that I did, like my birthday's coming up. I think your birthday's is your birthday also not soon?
Yeah, and it was just Chantel's.
Oh, awesome. Well, look at that. So cool. Happy birthday.
Yeah, happy birthday.
Coming up.
Future birthday. Yeah.
Right? Happy future birthday. Just happy birthday. I love it. Yeah. But that was like, I used to, my birthday day was a day where I was, okay, today's the day. We're like, I have no expectations. I'm just going to exist today. I'm going to order some like skip. And that's what I've done for years. And I was saying to Krista today, because my birthday's coming up, that I was like, I still want to do that. But that used to be the one day of the year that I gave myself permission to just exist. And I'm like, now I'm doing so much more of that and building that into my day to day and choosing priorities of being present and like honoring my energy, that I'm like, I still want to have that birthday day, but I'm also in a different place where like that it's not that one day of the year, and not feeling like guilty about it.
Be yourself.
Right? That's the message here.
Well, that sounds like a perfect message to end the episode on.
It does.
Yeah.
But I want to follow up later when you have, your business is going and how, like just everything, all your experiences. And,
cool.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I know.
Great.
It's gonna be some good stuff coming. Awesome. It was so lovely to chat.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to this.
I seriously think the last time that you and I had chatted was at dinner
at my house.
Yeah. I mean, I see your posts and stuff, so that's nice to connect. And Jake stuck me in the loop a little bit. So
yeah, that's awesome.
We'll make next weekend work no matter what.
I love it.
We would love to meet Krista, and just would love for you to come and see our little hidey hole here.
Awesome. Cool.
Meet our cat.
Even better. I follow that Instagram now, so that's awesome. I love it. So great, guys. Thank you.
All right. Well, thanks for listening, everybody.
Thank you.
the end of the episode.
That's
there.
it. Woo!